All right, team. Welcome to another episode of the Rabbit Show. We are diving deep into the evolving world of data engineering, discussing the challenges posing by legacy systems, rising volumes, and the rapid adoption of new technology trends. Today, I have some great friends on board. We'll be talking about the future where unified data management, analytics, and AI power businesses to break free from constraints and enable collaboration across data professionals. So feel free to ask any questions that you have. The guests that we have today are my very good friend Sanjeev Mohan, principal at Sanjmo and former Gartner Research VP, Big Data and Analytics, and Mitesh Shah, VP Market Research, Market Strategy from FSE. I'm super excited to welcome them both, but just before we get into the weeds of it, what I'm also doing is just letting you all know about a cool giveaway that we usually do. So you can type in hashtag the Rabbit Show in the chat, and what we'll be doing is making sure we choose a winner towards the end of the show. So you can do that. I already see Dustin was here like almost 9 minutes back. So Dustin, welcome to the show. Let me bring up our guests here. Hey Mitesh, hey Sanjeev, welcome to the Rabbit Show.
It's great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So I know we've spoken about so many topics backstage, and not only just that, before that as well. It is like you both have so much knowledge around the current trends that are happening around AI, LLMs. Low code Lakehouse Revolution is definitely what we'll be discussing today as well. But why not start with your introduction? Maybe Sanjeev, you can tell us more about yourself.
Ravit, you've already introduced me, so I'll do my best. So, hi everyone, so great to be on this show once again. I'm Sanjeev Mohan. I run my own advisory. I am literally days away from celebrating my second year being independent. And I left Gartner in July of 2021 because I wanted to pursue some of the more cutting edge technologies and things, approaches that were happening. At that time, data mesh was really big and data products were just coming into the picture. And now it's all about generative AI. So here I am. I get to do what my passion is for, and I get to hang out with wonderful people like Mitesh and Ravit. So, yeah.
That's nice. Mitesh?
Perfect. Okay. Thanks again for having me on the show. And yes, great to be here with Sanjeev once again. Feels like we're doing a world tour here, Sanjeev.
Yes.
Amazing. So just a bit about me. I've been in and around data analytics for a long time, almost a quarter century now. Cut my teeth at Oracle in the late 90s, way back in the day. And then moved into security. I actually worked in cybersecurity as a sort of hands-on practitioner of vulnerability assessments, penetration testing. But even there, we were sort of analyzing trends around vulnerabilities and security incidents. And so always been around data, ultimately merged those two sort of domains between data and security and became a PM for security at a big data company called MapR. And yeah, I mean, we had a lot of things to talk about, but I guess I just, conclude with there's two key themes that I would walk away over the past 25 years. One being that it is hard to get the right data to the business, and even harder to get the business to self-serve sometimes. And I feel like Prophecy is really cracking the nut on cracking the code, so to speak, on both of those fronts. And excited to chat with you all today.
Awesome. Like you mentioned, definitely you both are on a world tour. I know you both spoke at Databricks and Plus AI Summit just a few weeks back. So
Yeah.
can you tell us more about it? How was it and what was the experience like?
Mitesh, you want to go?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, my takeaway from that was Databricks just put on the conference of the year, just full stop, the conference of the year. It was just an incredible caliber of speakers at the keynote, including Satya Nadella, Mark Andreessen, and many others, to just an impressive array of product announcements from Databricks themselves, all the way to the quality breakout sessions, including Sanjeev and I speaking at the conference about LLMs and trends around the low-code Lakehouse. And so My takeaway there was simply that LLMs and generative AI was the conference was just abuzz with these topics, and there's just a lot of thirst for knowledge around LLMs and generative AI at the moment, and so lots of vendors, of course, claiming to sell picks and shovels, so to speak, and so I'm excited to speak here today with Sanjeev and you, Ravid, and just to take a step back and really help folks understand sort of the pros and cons and the options around this important technology trend before we get into selling the picks and shovel.
I had a very interesting experience that week because I spent the first half at Snowflake Summit in Las Vegas, and then I flew to San Francisco for the Databricks Data and AI Summit. I was
Nice.
I was very impressed. I think both the companies are on an amazing trajectory, innovating like crazy for the last few years, by the way, not just this year. But there's a big difference. Last year, I came back from these two conferences thinking that what they're saying is that we have mastered our strengths. Now we're completely focused on our weaknesses. This year, I noticed that Snowflake is saying, we run an amazing structured data warehouse, although don't call us that. We are a data cloud, and we are going to double down on that. And we're going to bring generative AI. Everybody has to, so no questions about it. But it's all coming out of their single engine. Databricks this year has decided also to focus on its strengths, which is machine learning, AI, now generative AI with foundation models. So I see both of them have a very strong place in the future state architecture, addressing their strengths, which gives the end users this optionality of picking either one or both, depending upon what workloads they have. So this whole notion last year, and even going into the two conferences this year, was that, oh my God, these two are butting heads. They're on a collision course.
Right.
I don't see that. Of course, everybody is addressing, even you can throw MongoDB, you can throw Oracle, whether it's now cloud. Everybody's trying to address all the needs, but I think there are very clear strengths that distinguish each of these platforms.
Okay. No, that's pretty interesting, Sanjeev, what you've shared here, because when they both the conferences decided to clash, it was one big deal for a lot of not only the vendors but also for the customers, because they had to straight and conquer, and it was really crazy. But looks like both the conferences did well. People attended, like many of the folks that I know attended both the conferences, and they were like, the energy was pretty much the same, and it's good. Just a follow-up question on that, Sanjeev. Obviously, in your previous role at Gartner, you must have observed many trends in big data and analytics. How do you see the field changing in the last few years? What do you feel about it?
So I like to say that data is a victim of its own success. It's so established that without leveraging the power of data and all the insights that are kind of hidden, a company cannot be competitive in its space. So with this realization comes this explosion of number of products that companies have, number of data sources, number of end users who want to do stuff with data. So they're constantly adding new use cases. So you see the whole package is exploding from its seams. So unfortunately, the person who's in the middle who gets squeezed is a data engineer, because you got more data producers, you got more data consumers. But what does this data engineer do? So this is the reason why we are now starting to think that should we really be thinking some sort of hybrid decentralization, centralization model. So not everything needs to come to the data engineering team. Also, business people are now pretty savvy. See, it used to be business people a generation ago had no idea about IT. But now the new kids who are coming into workforce, they're very IT savvy. So can we bring these two islands together and move some of the data engineering into the domains and
Mhm.
and decentralize some portion of the work. So the business subject matter experts from lines of business, they can now start building their own data artifacts, outcomes. But the problem is, so that's one trend. But there's a second problem. The problem is that although these people on business side are now very savvy with data and IT, they're not software engineers. So we need
Right.
to bring that discipline. We need to make it easy, self-service, low code, no code. All those things become really important. So that's a second trend. The third trend that I
Mm.
talked about was that in this dynamic space that we live in, we are constantly getting inundated with new technologies like reverse ETL. Or I'm just picking that as an example, but data observability is something that is
Right.
relatively new. So how do I know what's the right technology? How do I pick the right choice? So having open source based standards gives me a little bit of leverage that in case my compute engine goes away, let's say tomorrow Spark is gone and people are saying, no, no, you should really be using something else. If it's open source format, storage, compute engine, then it shouldn't really
Right.
matter. So that's the third one. And then Mitesh sprung upon me the fourth surprise one, which I had not anticipated. I let Mitesh talk about that.
Okay.
Mitesh, putting you on the spot.
A fourth trend around LLMs and generative AI. Is that the trend you're speaking about?
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
That was a bonus trend.
That was the
Yeah,
bonus trend that we
yeah,
had discussed at the Databricks conference. Exactly right.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, look, we can talk about generative AI all day long, and I'm sure we will, but I'd love to just kind of pick on one of these trends that you just spoke about, that being around low code, right? And you just have introduced very eloquently the need for low code environments. Low code the concept has been around for a long time. Some folks might know about it in different settings, right? Low code for application development as an example. But the business needs to be equally empowered to serve themselves data, to be able to create their own pipelines. And as you've just articulated, Sanjeev, these folks are not, they're very smart people, but they are not necessarily coders. They don't have that skill set. And so low code environments for transformations and for building pipelines are sorely needed. And ultimately, that's what Prophecy does. We can sort of be that low code platform for, yes, the business users, but by the way, there's a lot of value in here for data engineers as well, as they're able to kickstart their pipelining efforts with a visual environment, and then ultimately fine tune the code, because we translate that visual environment into code and fine tune and tweak that code and commit to Git.
Okay, these are interesting trends. Thanks for sharing first three. And Mitesh, obviously, the bonus trend kind of looks pretty interesting in terms of low code. That brings me to another question is just around the low code itself. So can you both elaborate on what do you mean by low code approaches? There could be many on those lines, but obviously if you're kind of focusing on the data engineering bit, maybe you can run on that line. And how do these enable businesses to make faster decisions and build a competitive advantage, to be honest? In the Mitesh, you can kick off with this one.
Yeah, I'd love to. Look, as I mentioned, I started my career just over 25 years ago at Oracle, and back then, little did I know it, but I was essentially a data engineer of sorts. And the tools and techniques I used back then were, PL SQL and manually coding some scripts and kicking off cron jobs, and it was truly legacy back then. In the past 5, 10, maybe 15 years. We've gotten introduced to two things, right? One is having low code data pipelining environments, but they're really built for on-premises environments. They're not really optimized for the cloud in any way. And ultimately, they lock you in with proprietary code, because these visual environments underneath the hood, it's all proprietary code. So you can't tweak it, you can't commit to Git, you can't do CI/CD, and so that's a problem. So that's one option, not a great option. The other option being, hey, you've got tools that are optimized for the cloud, but they're largely focused on SQL maybe in SQL alone, and they do nothing for the data lakehouse, nothing for Spark, nothing for Scala, and so that's sort of problem number 2. And ultimately, of course, with Prophecy, we're a platform that solves for all of these things, including Spark, including SQL, including orchestration, and as we're going to talk about around generative AI as well.
So you're on mute.
Sorry. Sanjeev, what are your thoughts around it?
So for me, what is low code, no code? It's basically a visual user interface where I have some pre-built widgets. I have access to my data sources, and I can start dragging and dropping into a palette. And I can start saying that, I want to bring data from my clinical trials database, but I also want to bring data from my electronic health records. But I also want to see data from some pharmacy, some third-party sources. So if I can drag and drop, but then I need to join it. So I'm getting some hints on some common fields. Now I need to aggregate it. So I drag the aggregate tool set into my palette, and behind the scenes, interestingly, my code is being generated in some open source language like SQL or Python or Java or Scala or something like that. So if need be, my data scientists can go and look at the code and maybe even enhance it. So, but if I'm a business user, I can just concentrate on the visual interface and visually create my pipeline. So that to me is low code, no code. It's not like there is no code, there is code, but it's kind of hidden behind the scene for those who want to take a look at it.
Yeah, I think it's like the minimal code that, but you're getting the maximum result out of it. So yeah, it does make sense. Let's take a few comments here. One from Dustin. So demand and complexity around data initiatives are definitely increasing. To your point, Sanjeev, that you were mentioning, put lots of pressure on data engineering functions for sure. So Dustin agrees with that.
So I have to say, by the way, the pressure is now so intense. When I go to conferences, I'm literally seeing CDOs. So Dustin is talking about data engineering being under pressure. CDOs are like deer in the headlights. The moment they hear that I've done some research and written some documents on LLMs, they're like, okay, to educate me. My CEO is banging on my door and saying, where is my LLM? How come our bank doesn't have a chat GPT yet? And he's like, I don't know. Like, there's just so much going on. It's moving parts. So the pressure has risen, gone up to the C-suite. So
the pressure is certainly. If I could just chime in on that. I mean, there's two things happening, right, as we're alluding to. One is that data engineering teams are severely sort of understaffed and resource constrained on the one end, and then on the other end, the business is not getting the data they need, and this is the real impact of the business. The business is not getting the data, the trusted data that they need in a timely manner, and that has a huge impact. So it's a perfect storm in some ways, and obviously there's several ways to crack that nut, but the low code environment here where businesses can serve themselves while at the same time collaborate with data engineers to fine tune and ultimately transform the code is sorely needed.
100%. I think that's a good point, Mitesh, in terms of, obviously it's more around the resources as well. If you're kind of understaffed, it kind of impacts a lot. That actually gets me to another question, which is around what are the challenges that organizations face when trying to overcome the limitations of legacy data systems, and how does the low code lakehouse concept address these issues? Because it's where I'm pretty sure a lot of companies kind of face those types of challenges. So Mitesh, what are your thoughts around it?
Yeah, I mean, as I alluded to before, the legacy environments are, again, they are positioned for and they're built for legacy environments, typically on-premises environments. And the world is now, as we're seeing, moving to Databricks. They're moving to Snowflake if they're not there already. And so these tools are simply not equipped for the cloud. So that's really problem number one. And then problem number two, as we've just alluded to, is that in these legacy tools, under the hood, there's all this proprietary code, JSON code, for example, that ultimately can't be tweaked because it's all just code that is meant for the tool itself. And so these are some of the challenges, sort of legacy ETL environments, but would love, Sanjeev's thoughts on this as well.
Mitesh, you said it really well, although you just said it in one sentence, but it was loaded. You said businesses want timely data they can trust. So so basically what you're saying is data, we know in banks and large organizations with thousands of pipelines, something will break. How do you know it's broken? Is it the data? Is it the CFO's responsibility to look at the dashboard and say, this data is not correct, something went wrong, and then it goes to the IT team? It should never be like that, right? I mean, the data consumer for us is a CFO. So reliability, data quality, timeliness is an example of data quality. So that's a challenge that companies are facing, and this is the reason why even though we say data engineering like they're overstretched, adding more data engineers does not solve the problem. What solves the problem is rethinking it and trying to see what is going wrong and how do we improve our existing discipline, processes, practices. Like low code is one of them. Data observability is another one of them. Data products is most definitely a way for us to bring these software engineering best practices of agile product management approach into the data, so we can start producing our outcomes faster in an agile manner with some sort of standardization. So these are the solutions to the problems that we are facing.
I think this is good. This is amazing in terms of the insights that you both are sharing, and that actually gets me to a question from the audience. For you, Mitesh, if you had to do it over again in terms of acquiring skills, entering into the field, especially with advent of low code, no code, what do you think?
You're on mute.
I think I was on mute here. If I had to do it over again in terms of acquiring skills, so here's what I would say. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all operation here, right? I had a long and winding path to get to where I am today, and I've acquired different skills in very different domains. And if there's actually one tip I would give the audience, really to anybody, it would be I guess it would be two things. Always keep learning. Never stop learning is point one. And point two, there are always practices and skills in other domains that you can bring to bear within your own work and within your own job. And this is actually, just to bring it back to what Sanjeev was saying, this is what I actually love about this concept of data products, right? We're taking this methodology and this almost best practice from product development and product management and software development and bringing it over to the world of data, because why shouldn't it be that way?
Yeah.
This is precisely the way it should be, because building great data, building great data products is an iterative process. It's not one and done. You need to be able to commit to Git and do your CI/CD. You need to have all of those things in the world of data. And so I don't know if that answers Dante's question, but it's, those are two things I would call out.
We need to be fixing our business problems, not fixing management, like data management problems if they've already been fixed. So software has fixed it, then just borrow the best practices. We have enough problems of our own. So
okay. Yeah, no, I think definitely I like both the points there. In terms of I'll definitely be taking. I'm just looking at the questions, and looks like there are some interesting questions. I'll get on that. But just before that, Sanjeev, a quick question for you. You were mentioning when it's around the LLMs, obviously all the CDOs or the folks in the folks sitting in the exec level, they're kind of hungry for that news where it's like, oh, LLMs, you've written an article, tell us more about it. What's changing? How it's evolving. But how do you see that impact in the data and analytics space? I'm pretty sure a lot of folks joining us today would love to learn that type of impact, because most of the companies are now also having that LLMs angle to their product line. So yeah, would love to learn more from
Yeah.
your standpoint.
So LLMs can play a number of roles. One, I'll mention maybe three. So one is, if if I have to write a lot of code, I can use LLM to help me. I'm not saying you cannot rely on LLMs. LLMs will give you an answer. Correct or not is not that important, but they'll give you an answer. So, but if I can use an LLM to get my boilerplate or template or 80% of my SQL or Python code written, then it makes me so much more productive. So I can use LLM to write my code. In fact, Databricks even announced something phenomenal. I would have never in my imagination thought of English SDK for Apache Spark, where you go to your IDE,
Right.
you instead of writing the SQL, you basically say, I want to select this thing with this in this sequence and group by those so and so. It'll write your code for you. So that's one. The second thing LLMs are really good at is they can look at my data, and they can, because an LLM is actually a machine learning model using deep neural network or something. So an
Right.
LLM is predicting the next word, but I can use it to help me guide how should my data management software uh, become more become optimized, so it can give me some recommendations on maybe that can help me lower cost. So that is using machine learning or an LLM inside the product. And then the third thing, the very biggest use of LLM is to help me do semantic search. And by semantic search, what it means is, like,
Right.
for example, if I ask a question to Google today, and those who are listening can try it, the question is very simple. Did George Washington own an Apple iPhone? Just ask that question. What is Google going to do? It's going to start looking at the keywords, and maybe you'll find something, an article that George Washington University student wrote on iPhone.
Right.
It'll find it. But if you ask the same question to ChatGPT or Bard or any of these open LLMs, it will tell you that no, he did not own an iPhone because he died in 1799 or something like that, and iPhones didn't come out till year 2000 something. So it has that little bit of a context, uh,
Mm.
so businesses can use LLMs in very powerful way. Don't rely on
Yeah.
it. Hallucinations happening. For example, let's take a very interesting, real life practical example. I mean, this is George Washington. That's a academic thing. So every organization, business is concerned about customers who will not renew. So let's say I have a customer churn problem, and everything I've tried has not been that successful. I want to try something new. So I asked my system, show me the customers who are most at risk of churning, and then propose to me a activation plan or a campaign.
Exactly.
This is a
Wow.
this is an example where the first part of my query is actually going to my SQL database and doing a SQL command, finding out here are the customers that we suspect may not renew. I send that to the LLM with all the parameters, and the LLM it's a language model. It'll come back and say, here is a list of recommendations that you should do. So this combination is super powerful.
Yeah.
No,
Ritesh, what would you like to add?
Yeah, would love to add something. I mean, this is just a great, very articulate summary here by Sanjeev around the LLM space and what we're seeing. And we're just again coming out of this conference, the Databricks conference, just a few weeks ago. The talk of the town: LLMs, generative AI. The way I view it is actually pretty simple, right? It's two sides of the same coin. In the future, probably all technology will have some sort of AI assistant that's leveraging LLMs and generative AI under the hood. There are a handful of companies that today are introducing those technologies right now, including Databricks to some extent, and Prophecy, where we've introduced Prophecy Data Copilot that can take natural language and generate trusted language, trusted pipelines based on that natural language request. And so what's the value prop there? That is, taking the low code environment and making it even more low code. It's basically making it no code, where the code is in fact, the joke of the conference was the code is now English. If you can speak English, you can actually develop trusted pipelines. So that's one side of the coin. It's the use of AI within technology. But the flip side is using technology to build generative AI applications. And so right now, obviously ChatGPT came to the fore around November of last year, and everybody's playing with it. You can ask it to write haikus and write blogs, a lot of interesting kind of cool stuff. But how do you now turn this technology and use it for enterprise applications? The key thing that's missing here is enterprise data, because GPT, all of these large language models they're trained on public data. In the case of GPT, it's public data until I think September of 2021. And so the key piece that's missing is this enterprise data. And there's a few different ways to now get the models to understand your own enterprise data. One of which is simply introducing that data within the prompt itself. And so that's, again, another announcement that Prophecy has made leading up to the conference, is our generative AI platform for enterprise data, where you can tokenize, vectorize that unstructured data from within your organization and ultimately create applications that leverage that data. Like if I'm asking about the company's vacation policy, I shouldn't have to go submit an HR ticket. I shouldn't have to go ask around. I should just be able to ask my friendly enterprise chatbot what the vacation policy is, and it should give me the response. Right. And so, we can do that very simply today with prompt engineering and with Prophecy.
Yeah, I think 100%. Go ahead, Sanjeev.
I was just thinking, listening to both of you. Another interesting example is every organization has a customer support department. You get calls from happy customers, but mostly irate customers. Mm-hmm. Happy customers will never call you. So an irate customer calls you. You have generative AI is fantastic at doing this kind of transcription, converting that audio, summarizing it, because it's a language model. So, and even doing sentiment analysis. Now, if I have some sort of like this, sorry if I'm throwing buzzword like LangChain that says, go look into my customer database and find out how important is this customer, like what kind of revenue is this customer generating, how important is it, like an NPS score, and I feed that into the LLM. You already have the transcript of what transpired. Now you know whether this is my blue blood customer that I really need to prevent, and generate for me a response, an email. And all of a sudden, I am now so much more productive because I have created a very customized email to this customer with summarization of what we discussed without spending an hour or two.
Yeah.
Can I add one last thing to that?
Yeah, point, please. I thought so.
Such an excellent point. But I had this example of the HR ticket and asking about the vacation policy. Sanjeev, you have this great example of, around support tickets. We're just scratching the surface. Correct. On the number and the number of possible use cases, the raw potential here. And so the important thing is I call this sort of AI paralysis. There's so many different options, and the technology can be confusing, and just get started. It's actually not hard. Everybody can get started today building a generative AI application. And once you start building things, once you start figuring out what's right for you, you'll end up with a deeper understanding. At worst, you'll end up with a deeper understanding of what works for your own organization when it comes to building these generative AI applications and making use of this important technology.
I'm loving this. I think it's great what points Sanjeev, Mitesh, you both are sharing. It's pretty interesting. And Sanjeev, you made a very good point around, obviously understanding the customer, and with maybe LangChain, if you can get that understanding and putting into the LLMs. it's a game changer for sure for a lot of folks out there. Awesome. So jumping on to our questions from audience, let's take this one from YouTube. What are some common misconceptions or concerns that organizations have about adopting low-code platforms, and how can those concerns be addressed? Mitesh, what's your take on this? Very interesting question.
Yeah, it is a good question. I would say one misconception that I alluded to earlier is that low code only applies to certain areas like application development. As we've just discussed, it can apply and should apply to the build out of data pipelines as well. I think the second misconception, again, as we alluded to, is that low code stays low code and all you get is a visual drag and drop environment. It doesn't have to be that way, right? You can have low code environments and you should have low code environments that ultimately produce what we call open or open source code under the hood that is Git committable, that allows you to do CI/CD, that allows you to build those data products, as Sanjeev has alluded to. And so, those are kind of two misconceptions that come to mind.
Yeah. Sanjeev, anything you would like to add?
No, I think that's great. That's very well.
Yeah, exactly. Sanjeev, also one quick question from my end in terms of, I know you like, I was telling you this backstage as well, you're like the OG for data products, you talk a lot around it. So, but my question definitely is something around, what a lot of folks also ask is, can you tell us more about how do you build data products? How is it done?
Yeah, very good question. Thank you for asking that. So, by the way, thanks for giving me that title, OG. I think there are a lot of people who are actually building it right now. My good friends at Roche, I talk to them quite a bit. Omar Khwaja and Paul Rankin are literally building data products so fast. They have over 350 data products now. And
oh, wow.
So I was on a call with Paul Rankin just 3-4 days ago. So I was asking him, so give me an example of a data product. So he's like, we have a data product that measures the information metrics coming out of instruments on the factory floor globally. And so what they're doing is, so they're building these data products. The first step has to be business outcome focused. See, in the past, when we built data marts, for instance, or data warehouses, it was an IT project as opposed to a business-driven program. So an IT project has a project manager who goes into his or her shell. I've been guilty of that for the next 1 year, building out a data warehouse. 1 year later, we showed up and we said, here is your data warehouse. And the business said, thanks, but no thanks. Our requirements changed while you were busy building it. So we are going back to Excel. But if business drives it, then that's how you build it. You start with a business. And people like Chad Sanderson and some other have been talking a lot about data contracts. There's a contract between the data producer and the consumer that says that this is going to be the schema, this is going to be the attributes and the values like uptime, availability, how do you access it, if there's an API, it's a REST or GraphQL or whatever it may be. So there's a data contract. You define all that. Only then you start building it. So that coding step is not the first step. It is actually almost like step number 3, because business comes first. Then you build a framework so you can do reusability, because now you're going to build these things very fast. There you need data ops, some sort of a data ops tooling. Data ops has things like automation, orchestration engine, CI/CD for deployments, continuous testing, version control, a data products catalog, a marketplace where people can discover these data products. So this is sort of the middleware that gets put, and then you code. And so this is the flow. And by the way, I'm if it sounds like I have it all in my head and I'm telling you these things, it's because right now I'm in the process of co-authoring data products for dummies, which we want to
Oh, wow.
launch. Yeah, so our goal is to launch it at Big Data London. So
Wow, this is amazing. So definitely I get a signed copy at Big Data London for
yes,
sure.
we want to do some launch.
I
Yes, go ahead.
For
With
sure.
you.
And I
Yeah.
was just gonna, yeah, for sure we'll do it. And I was just gonna, tell you about that itself. That Sanjeev, since you have so much knowledge around data products, and you obviously talk to a lot of data product builders as well, it kind of makes all sense where you can put it all together where people can actually learn from it. And you just mentioned you're coming up with a book, so nothing better than that. So thanks for that. Also, one quick question for you. Mitesh, I know we've spoken about, obviously the past, the present, how are things looking at the, currently, but how do you see, technologies evolving in the future, and what new opportunities and challenges can we anticipate? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I guess I'll answer that question a little bit indirectly, in that, what I'm hearing, what we're all hearing about AI and LLMs, generative AI right now is that, all of our jobs are going to become obsolete. It's going to be robots and AI just kind of running amok and taking over all of our jobs. And it's just not going to happen. Mark Andreessen, I think, had a very sort of good way of putting it during the keynote at the Databricks conference, dubbing it the lump of labor fallacy. Right, this notion that there is a fixed amount of work that is to be done in this world. There's not a fixed amount of work. Right, when has technology ever put large swaths of jobs obsolete, and those jobs have never come back? It's never happened. There's always going to be this category of technology will create jobs, if anything. And so, I'm no futurist, but I really loved how Mark put it on stage there, and wanted to bring that back as a reminder that this technology will be an enabler, and it will allow everybody just focus on higher value and higher value tasks going forward. So I'm just incredibly excited about it.
Yeah, I think also with all the automation and the robotic things kind of coming out, it's around someone needs to be there to manage them as well. So in the end, people are not going anywhere. It's where, like you mentioned, obviously the lump of labor, and it all makes sense to me. Sanjeev, what do you think about the space evolving?
Yeah, one example that I was just thinking of was before our time when banks introduced ATMs. I wonder what happened at that time. I'm sure there were a lot of concerns that these young out of college kids who are busy dispensing cash, their jobs are going to go away. But really, is that the best use we could put of human mind to dispense cash? Those same kids probably became private client bankers, or even financial advisors. So we took their dispensing cash job and gave it to a machine that automated it. And I love what Mark Andreessen said. We have huge, massive capacity, and no machine is going to replace it, at least not now. Maybe
Yeah.
that'll happen sometime, but not now. So the human tasks become more and more refined, where we are actually making use of our faculties far better than something that's mechanical, repeatable, that a machine can do better for us.
Yeah, it's true for low code, by the way, where now data engineers can focus on the higher value tasks as business users are able to create their own pipelines and self-serve, and it's going to be true for generative AI as well.
Yeah, I think those are good points. Quickly taking just one or two more questions, and all right, since you were talking about this, so quick question from Navina: what level do you think data engineers will adopt low code, no code platforms? Mitesh, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've got Fortune 100, in some cases, Fortune 10 customers using Prophecy, and dozens, if not hundreds, within an organization, hundreds of data engineers adopting the platform. And there's several reasons for that, but the primary one is low-code platforms are not just low-code necessarily. Prophecy is not just visual drag and drop. It also creates that code under the hood where they can now have an effective way to collaborate with the business, right? As the business is developing those pipelines visually, they have a way to collaborate now with them. That's one example of the code, as I mentioned. The other bit being building gems, what we call it, or building a framework builder, where you can modularize aspects of pipeline building. So if your organization, for example, has a very specific way of encrypting or masking data, a data engineer can have a block for that, create a gem for that, and now you've got the entire business that can leverage that gem in their own pipeline. So you've got a standardized way of doing encryption and masking throughout the organization. There's really clear benefits to using low code, not just for the business users, but also data engineers.
That's nice. Thanks for that question. Good answer. Quick question here for Sanjeev. I think regarding data products, is it correct to say that the kind of business insights we bring from data platforms, including DW Edge, Data Lake, Data Mesh? What are your thoughts, Sanjeev?
So the kind of business insights we bring from the traditional data warehouses, marts, and from data products are no different. It is we are not reinventing and saying everything that we did is wrong. A materialized view could be a data product. A machine learning code could be a data product. Even I would say even a report or a dashboard could be a data product. So the outcomes are exactly the same. The philosophy is different. Philosophy says that there's got to be some sort of accountability, a sense of ownership, and that comes from data product owner. There has to be a discipline in how you built it. So if the CFO says this number is not right on my dashboard, there is a person who's responsible, as opposed to I don't know where the problem, whose fault is it? No idea. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, a quick follow-up question on that, Sanjeev. So when you say it's more about the accountability as well, does it also depend on the business? How does the business measure it? Like, can you call that as a data as well?
Yeah, so that's a great point, because like any product, you can take the product and you can do something with it and build your own product. Oil comes out of the ground, it's not refined, it's a product. Somebody takes that oil and turns it into the gas that we put in our car. Somebody makes it into aircraft fuel. Somebody takes that gas and then turns it into plastic. So in a product world, you've got all of these derived products. So if I work for a marketing department and I create a customer master product, finance can take my product and say, now I'm going to apply the revenue and try to see customer churn kind of stuff. Customer support can take my product. So the business users have to be, they have to know what are they consuming. That's why you need a catalog. So I know what my measures are. Like you said, how do I measure it's a good product? How do I know it's the right one? And then my product is used by another consumer. And this is actually very tricky, because if you think of it, if I'm a data engineer and I'm producing it because I'm developing, I don't even know who my consumer is. How do I know who my end user is going to be? Because I know who requested it. I got their requirements. I did a data contract. I put it out into the marketplace. Now I've opened it up. It's on a marketplace. Somebody else can consume it. But if their requirements are different, and they can then come back to me and say, we are using your product, but here are the things that we need. So I put that on a ticket. So I put it on Jira, I prioritize it, and I start building the next version of my data products. Imagine this, you would never buy a software product without knowing what version number it is. We never version number our data artifacts, but now we can. So there's a data product 2.0, which was built for marketing, and then there's 3.0, which is a sales oriented data product with some different attributes.
Yeah, These are great points, Sanjeev, and that's one of the reasons I tell you should come out with more and more. You should have your knowledge out there for everyone in courses and books. So thanks for that. Quick question before we wrap up. I would love to know: do you have any advice for companies that are, beginning to explore these technologies, and how should they approach? What's like the implementation process? Mitesh,
Yeah.
any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, sticking with just generative AI, going back to generative AI at the moment, again, the hard problem here and the real value add for businesses is taking that enterprise data and figuring out what use cases make the most sense. And as I just discussed, it's not hard. It's not hard to do that. It's not hard to build those generative AI applications on your enterprise data. Our CEO and our co-founder did it in 13 minutes on stage at the Databricks conference. Any organization can do that in a week. And so people are probably wondering, like, what is the right use case? What is the right data to incorporate? My advice would be just get started. Start thinking of things, start iterating, and it'll get better over time, and you'll figure out what's working for you and what's not. And again, the worst that'll happen is that you figure out what use cases are working for you and what's not. And in the best case, I think would be you ultimately drive business outcomes for your organization with lower cost, improved efficiency, you name it.
Awesome. These are great points, Sanjeev.
Yeah, no, that's the way to do it. If you have a maturity model and you say there's beginner, intermediate, advanced, and you want to apply to data products, let's say, and LLMs, guess what? There are no advanced users. So if you are beginning it, congratulations, you are a majority. If you want to move up the maturity curve, like Mitesh said, just build it and experiment it. And that's the only way you will move up the maturity curve.
Yeah, no, I think for sure these are great points, and thanks for all the insights that you both have shared. Quickly jumping on to our giveaway for the day. Let's see who our winner is. This is a very cool raffle. We do it not with the LLMs, not with the AI, but just by collecting, and we have all the names we've typed in hashtag the Rabbit Show in the comments. So let's see. Etain. Oh, my friend Etain, congratulations. You know where to reach out to me, and I'll ship you the Rabbit Show swag. So that's the cool thing we do. But once again, thank you very much, Sanjeev, Mitesh. It was such a pleasure to have you both. And I think you both have shared such amazing insights around the data and analytics. I know we couldn't take all the questions, but definitely feel free to get there, and feel free to check in the comments or answer any of those in the comments as well. But one last quick question for both of you: if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way? Where can they reach out?
So for me, it's LinkedIn. Please, those
Okay.
who are interested, please connect. I also have a podcast series that it's called It Depends. So if you search for It Depends YouTube, I also have a Medium where I've been adding more content lately, including my findings from Snowflake and Databricks Summit. And it's very easy to get to my Medium site. It is my company name, sanjmo.medium.com.
Okay, that's very cool. Where can people find you, Mitesh?
Where can people find me? On LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn is probably best. My profile picture doesn't have spiked fuzzy hair. It's a little bit different, a little bit more conservative, but
at least you have
can
hair.
find me there. Yeah. But and Prophecy, go to prophecy.io, not a .com. It's prophecy.io, and people can actually just spin up a free trial. It's fun. It's easy. Give it a whirl.
Okay, that's awesome. I'll share both.
I thought when you asked him where can you find me, he would say under the table most of the time. But just kidding. Yeah.
Awesome. This was great. Thank you once again, Sanjeev, Mitesh, and to all the lovely audience that joined us today and asked some amazing questions. Looking forward to a good 2.0 session very soon.
Yes.
Amazing. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.